Did you know that there's 4.52 million podcasts readily available right now? Out of those 4.52 million, 90% of podcasters quit before they reach 3 episodes. Of those 452,000 that are still left, another 90% quit before they reach 20 episodes. So to be in the top 1% of all podcasts globally, you need to record 21 episodes. Well, I'm incredibly grateful because we have reached that milestone and we want to continue producing great quality work for you. It's not about the episodes, it's not about the fanfare, but it's about making something that's going to be quality, that's going to be impactful for each person's life that's hearing this. Can you help me be a part of this journey by simply hitting subscribe or follow? By doing so, it continues to grow our reach so that way we can get the best quality guests for you to continue on this currency of happiness journey. Thank you. Stephen Van Santen, I'm very thankful that you're here today. This is going to be a very different style of podcast where we're actually going to flip the script a little bit and co-interview one another as we're talking about the deaths of our brothers. My brother passed away almost a year ago. And during that season of time, you actually were one of the first individuals to call me and talk about your experience of losing your brother. And so as I was gearing up to the anniversary of my brother, I'm like, how can I honor him? What would that look like? And I wanted to do this with you. So thank you, Stephen, for being willing to be a part of this journey.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last, how many years have we known each other?
A decade?
Decade. Yeah. Last 10 years. So when I heard about the news of your brother and just his passing, my heart was just moved. And I thought, you know what? I know what it's like to lose my brother. I lost my brother in 2023, November 11th. 2022. So 3 years ago, November. And it's painful and it's difficult. And sometimes you just need someone to talk to. Not necessarily provide answers to, but just be a listening ear. So I was happy to be there for you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Stephen, who was Philip?
Phil was someone who stood about 6'3", a lot bigger than me, stronger than me, smarter than me. But he was full of life. And he'd walk into a room and he would command attention and he'd tell a joke and people would laugh. He was bigger than life. It's tough to describe in words. But to me, he was like an idol. He was a year and a half older than me. I have 2 other brothers. Each of us are kind of staggered, the same gap in between, about a year and a half. And we all looked up to him. And so he was a leader. And I honestly wanted to be like him, especially growing up. So, yeah.
What was it about him that drew you so much? Obviously, he's your older brother. And so naturally, all siblings want to be like their older brother. But what was one of the defining traits?
I would say for me, it was his stories. So when he would begin to tell a story, he would kind of get into the details and it felt like you were right there. And that carried into other parts of his life, right up to his grade 12 year leading the basketball team as the captain all the way to provincials. I think they got second place that year. The following year, that team that he helped mold got first place. So yeah, I would say he was a leader, a good storyteller, and held a personal impact that way. Yeah.
And so you said 2022 was when he passed away. Where were you when you got that phone call?
I was in Calgary. I was at a client's house. We were looking at their retirement plan and estate plan. And I noticed that my phone, my parents had FaceTime me. Now they never FaceTime me. So I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's kind of strange. Maybe they pocket dialed me by accident. So I let it go to voicemail and then it went again. So I excused myself and I took the call, and I saw my mom and dad in tears, and they informed me that the police had found my older brother, Philip, his body. At that point, it shocked me, and then it also didn't shock me. Maybe we'll get into that in a moment. But I thanked them for the call. I composed myself, and then I went back, and I thought to myself, well, there's nothing I can really do at this moment. I should finish up the plan, and then I'll have some time to think through this and navigate all the emotions that were flooding in. So I'm sitting down with this lady, and we're going through the remainder of the plan. And every time we talked about, the passing, a lump began forming in my throat as I felt all the emotions trying to surface. And I finished up my time there and was able to step out and phone a friend and just begin to, go through that difficult, the next difficult number of months and some years of processing the loss of someone who's super close to you, and then not, and goes before their time. Phil was 39 when he passed away.
Tell me about that phone call with a friend, because I think, first off, people might think that it's a bit surreal that you continue on that appointment. But I think in that state of mind, there's probably so much that's going through that it's almost that dopamine rush of, I need to focus on this and compartmentalize until I can get out of this scenario. But what did it feel like when you called that friend and told them what took place?
Yeah, so kind of the way I think is there's nothing you can really do right now. You can mourn, but you could do that later too, rather than having to come back to doing a job that's you're already in Calgary to do. You finish up that. I had another appointment. I finished that up, and in between those appointments, I'd made a personal appointment, and actually it was Pastor Bryce that I connected with, and it just started the conversation. And I said, "Hey, listen, this is where I'm at. Not feeling a lot right now, but obviously I will." So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's so good to know that there's people that will take care of you. That you can say, "Hey, I know that this is going to lead to something. I need you to have my back." And that's really powerful. You'd made mention that it wasn't a surprise that police found Philip. Do you mind sharing some of what led to why you don't feel like it was a surprise?
Yeah, I think whenever you have, and anyone listening knows this, who has someone who has addictions, especially when it comes to drug and alcohol addictions, if they've been struggling for a number of years, moving into on and off, a decade or even more, you know that there is a call that you're going to receive one day that most likely is going to say, "Hey, this person that you loved has passed away." And you tuck it away, but it is in the back of your mind. Now, thankfully, there's lots of people that have made it through addiction, and they're so much better because of it. But I would say, that was in the back of my head. So, but just because you have that thought in the back of your head doesn't mean that you're prepared for it when it happens.
Was it something that you felt like you had practiced receiving that call, processing the emotions, things of that sort?
No, I don't think so. Everyone handles a phone call like that differently. Some people run into hysterics. Other people remain calm under that pressure. And so I lean more towards that. Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
So Phil had this addiction. Do you remember when that started?
Yeah. Okay. So Phil, I remember, and let me set the stage. It's grade 12. It's Philip's graduation. And we're sitting there as a family along with faculty and a whole bunch of other families. And we're watching the graduates of whatever year he was graduating being paraded on stage and now being seated towards the audience. And there was a number of speakers, and there was the main speaker. And I just remember a number of times he had to turn around and elevate his voice, and it was all directed at my older brother, who had been up a couple late nights before, and he was dozing off there in the middle of the speech. So he was like literally dozing off. So his classmate had to elbow him a couple times, and you could hear the crowd all murmuring and laughing. But that's when I began to realize, okay, there's probably something that's not quite right. Where it hurt me on a heart level was afterwards when we wanted to go as a family. I have two other brothers. As I mentioned, we all wanted to go as a family to take my older brother out to DQ to go celebrate his graduation.
You need a blizzard to celebrate.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And Phil said, no, I don't want to go. I'd rather go partying. So that's on a heart level, my oldest brother, my idol. I could see those choices that he was personally making affect his relationships with his family, and that would be the struggle moving forward.
Right. And so what did that then become to escalate into?
Well, he would start to spend time with people who were also doing drugs and partying at the time. And, a lot of people go through a party phase, but the hardness of the drugs that was being taken also had large factors, and the people he was associating with were not healthy influences. And so there's people who could get into a party lifestyle and then be able to navigate their way to maturity. But he got stuck there for a little while. And then he got treatment, and he had a huge period where he was an amazing father, raised kids, and great spouse. But along the line, he again found himself struggling, and he fell back probably around the last 5 years of his life, I'd say.
What do you think kept bringing him back to that lifestyle?
That's a good question. I would probably just say the people you associate with play a powerful role in your future. So I would say that was probably the number one thing. And yes, if you've ever done any hard drugs, I imagine there's a large temptation to want to do it again. So it's a large struggle. So I don't have an easy answer to that, but I would probably say the people he associated with was a large factor in that.
So seeing the route that he was going on and knowing, hey, this is probably going to be reality. You get the call. You're starting to process through those emotions. What did walking through grief truly feel like in that season?
Okay, so walking through grief with your older brother passing away age 39 was difficult because part of you, at least for myself, want your older brother to be the best older brother. The older brother that opens doors for you of opportunity, who encourages you when you're down, who believes in you when no one else will believe in you, and who continually cheers you on. That wasn't exactly the brother that I got. And in fact, that sometimes that's where the role reversal felt, where I became the older brother and I took on that responsibility to really help my older brother when he was down and cheer on my younger brothers. And I'm glad I could do that, and I wouldn't take that back. But it would have really been a wind in my sails had I seen my older brother doing that a lot more.
Mm.
Um, so navigating the grief is kind of complex. So when I arrived there at the funeral home, I sat down in the room by myself, and I was looking at Philip, my older brother, and I just remember just saying, "Phil, I'm so mad at you."
Mm.
And of course, I was crying, um, and I couldn't quite express it in words, but upon reflection, I felt like I was gypped of my older brother, who I knew was there all along and who was able to be that older brother cheering me on. However, um, with the struggles that he faced, it was difficult for him.
Mhm. If you could change it all, what was it the one thing that you were wanting from him in that season?
I think everyone wants um, the best version of the person who's struggling. I would want a lot more um, conversations like I had. I remember this one conversation. Him and I would talk on the phone a lot. I lived in Red Deer. He lived in Chilliwack. And um, he said this one thing, and it stuck out to me. I'd written a check with $1 million on it, not to be cashed yet. And I'd given it actually I wanted to give it to a charity. There's a particular charity I had in mind. And this had been probably 10-year gap between me writing this check and actually this conversation. And this was about the year that he passed away. But he said, "Stefan, you remember that check? I know you're going to write it one day. And you're going to be able to cash it. And you're going to have a big impact." Andrew, if I had more of that,
Mm.
I know that could have helped shape more of my life positively. Not that my life's turned out bad, but I think the impact of an older brother speaking into your life
Mm.
carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. An older brother's meant to be an encourager, to lift you up when you're down, to push you forward with that vision.
Yeah.
And even though you didn't get the full package of it, just that glimpse, yeah, it means a lot.
Yeah. Now, we're going to do a little role reversal
Let's do
here.
it.
We're going to talk a little bit about your brother.
Okay.
And I'm excited about getting to know the story that you have. And it's an interesting story because your brother had different difficulties.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Like, what were the difficulties that your brother had?
Mhm.
And then what was it like growing up with him?
Yeah. So my older brother, his name's Simon. He's 3 years older than me. So when he was born, the umbilical cord was actually wrapped around his neck. And so he lost the majority of his brain cells. Functioned about a 3-month-old level, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. Lots of support needed. Eventually, over time, lost the function of being able to eat. So couldn't consume, so it had to be fed through a G tube through his stomach. And so growing up, I just assumed everyone has an older brother that's in a wheelchair. Like everyone just has a brother that you only talk to and they just listen. And quickly realized that's not the norm for everyone else. And so it was interesting because I think when you grow up with a family member that special needs, has a disability, there's a lot of empathy that comes with that I couldn't really pinpoint at that time. I think it gave me an awareness of the individuals in my life that are different and how to communicate with those or look for those and figure out how can I ensure that that isn't the case. And so even though I had this big brother in my life, it really felt like I was the firstborn, even though I wasn't, because I would go in the mornings and open up his feeding tube and prepare everything and get his meal ready. I would help with, like, if he was crying, I'd go in and I'd read to him. My toys growing up were in his room, so that way we could go in and play. And even though he couldn't play with us, he was still there and a core part of the childhood growing up. And so Simon lived with us until he was 16 years old. I would have been 13. And that's not normal. Like, I look at my parents and just what they did, and they truly went above and beyond to create such a great environment for him. You look at the statistics, and typically dad walks out of the situation if there's a child with special needs. And the fact that they chose one another, even despite what was going on, was quite incredible. But then my mom having to be a stay-at-home mom, fully care for Simon to the point where she couldn't even lift him, and that realizing, okay, this isn't fair for him. And so at that point in time, they were looking for nursing facilities where Simon could go get the care and attention that he needs.
You got it, man.
But I remember just being so angry and saying, that's my brother. Like, I always imagined when my parents eventually passed away, Simon would live with me, and me and my wife would take care of him, figure out all those needs. And I can only imagine how unfair it was for my parents if they're thinking that they're trying to do the right thing. And they got little Andrew over here saying, what the heck is going on? And then my younger brother, Jordan, like, I'm just here for a fun ride. I don't know what's going on. He knew what was going on.
We'll get Jordan on this. We'll ask him some questions. Yeah.
But that was just a really difficult season. And then 3 years later, my parents, our family decides we're actually going to move provinces. Just financially, it didn't make sense to stay in Ontario anymore. Alberta was the land of milk and honey. Everything was flowing. It just made sense. And again, I remember that feeling of, but what about Simon? Like, we're going to leave him 3 provinces over. And we looked and looked. My parents looked for nursing facilities here in Alberta, and just nothing met the level of care. And realizing how selfish it would be to bring him just to fulfill a need for us. And that was heartbreaking. And so as time went on, we'd go visit quite frequently. But then life just begins to progress. I graduate. I'm now my own finances. I can't afford to go to Ontario. So there's a long period of time where I just didn't see my brother. And think, well, he's only 3 provinces over. He could probably phone call. I'm like, yeah, but it's on a 2-way conversation. I always jokingly say, like, my brother's the strong silent type. He can't talk, so he can't say too much.
That's funny.
And then even we try FaceTiming, but then you end up FaceTiming with the nurse and not your brother, and you don't get that connection, that relationship, even just that physical touch of just being able to put your hand on your brother's shoulder and just know that he's there, or the smell of the dander in his hair because his hair was never very well kept and stuff like that. All of those different moments. And so that was my journey with my brother. It was one of, he taught me. Yeah.
So remind everyone again the name of your brother.
Simon.
Simon. And Simon had a different journey than a lot of people. Did he go to school? Like, did he attend the same school? What was it like with him?
It was interesting because school was more of a social outing. So load up in the wheelchair, we'd go on the bus together. It was funny. We had like this big green Astro van that you had the door and then the ramp comes out the side. So it looks like it has one wing. And so we were the only people in the community that had this van. And so you just knew when the Roshas were coming somewhere. But yeah, I would remember like my younger brother and I, we'd be in school and then we'd go and visit our older brother in his class, and it was other individuals with special needs. But like I said, he was functioning at basically a 3-month-old level. So it wasn't really going to learn something. It was more of a social outlet. But he would enjoy listening to music, just hearing conversations. It's funny, later in life, I looked up, what does all of our names mean? And Simon's name actually means the one who listens, which I thought was the most ironic and just one of those winks of my parents didn't know about at that time. But yeah, just he was always there to listen.
Did Simon ever get bullied, or did you ever see bullying take place?
Yeah, he was never bullied. But whether this was good or bad, I would see others with disabilities being bullied. I remember once there was this other person that had mobility issues and so was walking with crutches for his entire life. And kids just making fun of him and would hide his crutches and whatnot and just getting so angry. And we're in this lab, it's a huge lab, and I grabbed their books and I walked them all the way to the other side and I just left them there. I'm like, what would you do? I'm like, go walk. Like, if you're so upset about this person that he's having struggles walking, like, why don't you go walk? And I think they didn't realize the connection that was there of why. And I don't even know if that other individual knew my story, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, why are we going to make life harder for this individual when life's already hard enough?
What's the feeling that you get, Andrew, when you see people mistreated? Can you describe that emotion?
Yeah, I think I have a strong sense of justice. And that's good and bad, because you want there to be right in the world. I often get teased I usually have a black or white mentality on things. And I've had to really learn of slowing down and hearing. Because yes, there's a sense of justice. Yes, there's right and wrong. But there's often stories that go along with that. And so even though someone might be bullying the other person, it's now realizing with hindsight, hey, there's probably a reason why they were doing that and what's actually going on for them. And I think that becomes so much more powerful. Like, I truthfully feel embarrassed with some of the things I did when I saw bullies, but I didn't know at that point. So I can't hold myself to that light. But now it's okay, they're bullying, but there's probably a reason behind that. How do I have the hard conversation that might be uncomfortable when it would be easier to just quickly deal with this in a different way? Most people start with motivation. Very few start with a system. Last year, I didn't guess my way through goals. I used the same framework I'm sharing with you today. Here's what it helped make possible. It increased our net worth. We bought 4 properties, 2 on the same day, spent more intentional time with family and friends, received 2 promotions, and took a dream vacation. This wasn't hustle. It wasn't willpower. It was clarity, structure, and alignment. That's why I created the ultimate goal setting framework. If you're tired of setting goals that sound good, then disappear, this is for you. Download it for free at thecurrencyofhappiness.com and start pursuing goals in a meaningful way.
So Simon passed away at a young age, and left an impact. His life left an impact. And although parts of you died when Simon died, parts of you, I believe, thrive and continue on in memory of Simon. Can you describe, when it comes to business or the way that you operate in your family or in your friendships, what that positive impact looks like?
That's a good one. I think growing up, I longed for that older brother, like you said, the one who would be the encourager, that would give you those glimmers of hope, like Phil did with that check. And because of that, I was like, okay, what could have happened if Simon functioned like I did, in all relative terms, was fully capable of doing whatever? And that inspired me for a season. And then it felt like it dwindled. And I remember shortly after him passing, just, do I want this to be where it stops? Like, I don't want the story of who he is, even though it was limited, to end with him. And so it almost reignited something in me of like, what actually could I be capable if it was the strength of two individuals? It was the mindset of two individuals. And I think, like, I look back at this past year, and it's been one of the funnest years of my life, but it's also been one of the best, which is ironic when you think of, you just lost your brother and somehow it's become one of the best years of your life. God works in mysterious ways. And I think it was just something that he needed to unlock in me to see, how can you reach your full potential and not hold back?
Sometimes people are afraid to push forward and take those challenges. You've shared a couple personal stories, which, down the road, you'll reveal in podcasts to come, which are very exciting. But they really connect with taking the lid off and going to another level of Andrew. And I would say Simon definitely has inspired you to go take that next level and to not be afraid. To fully express yourself. I have a question, and it's a loaded question, but I think the audience is going to appreciate the candor on this, because it actually shoots both ways at both of our brothers. The question is this: is society better without dead weight, as they would describe as dead weight? Society would describe, not all people, but flippant comments might describe your brother to be dead weight, no contribution to society. They might describe my brother to be a dead weight, a non-contributor to society.
I love this question. So I'll give you a bit of a story so that way I can hopefully answer this effectively. About 6 months prior to Simon actually passing away last year, it would have been December of 2024, he was not doing well. He was in the hospital, and we assumed at that point, hey, this is probably going to be it. I hadn't seen my brother in almost a decade. And it's suddenly just the weight of realizing this could be the last time I could see him, and I don't know what to do with this. My wife will watch me wrestle with that emotion. And to Emily's grace, she booked a ticket, booked me hotel rooms, figured out transportation. You're going. And I, hands down, the best gift I could have. We're going to have to do a lot of editing.
Oh, man.
Hands down, the best gift that she could have given me. And I remember being in the hospital room for 3 days. Brother can't talk. He's in so much pain. All he's doing is crying. And like, he's been in here a week and without me. And there's been minimal doctors visit, minimal nurses. Like, can we do something? Like, how do we relieve this? They're so short staffed with nurses that they had to change his diaper because he was in a diaper his whole life. But I actually had to physically change my brother's diaper with them. And I fought that question. I'm like, man, isn't this crazy of how much financial resources are going towards him? And I think that if I didn't have a faith, I would say, what's the purpose of this? I think naturally, if you don't have a faith, if you don't believe in God, it would be so easy to write off individuals that need help, need aid, and need assistance, which is backwards of what society tells you. I think there's certain parties that would say that we're here for individuals, that we're supporting them, whatnot. But I think truly when you have a faith and you care, it doesn't matter the quality of life, the quantity of life, any of those sort of things. Life is still life. And do I believe that it was God's perfect orchestrated plan? I don't know. I don't know what the intent was with all of that, but I believe that God put Simon on earth for a reason, for purposes. And even though that, as you said, could be considered a dead weight, a drain on society, drain on resources, I think God's promise for us, God's desire, God's heart is for those individuals, and it teaches us a lesson. I remember shortly after, an individual had said, there must be such a sense of relief that Simon's gone. I'm like, no. Like, I'm so glad I know where he is and that he's in full form, full body. But he's still your brother, like, still my brother. And it doesn't matter what that looks like. So long-winded answer to answer, is that a dead weight on society? I fully believe no. I think there's lessons to be learned, and that's what life is about. The lessons and choices that we make through that journey. But let's flip that back. Let's load it up on yourself. Would you say that society is better without an individual that's struggling with addictions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It was your question,
I'm glad that
so
I
it's a
asked
good-
that question. So actually, I brought something I think that's going to help, and hopefully I can do this justice. But this is from Philip's wife, and she'd posted something on Facebook a year after he had passed away, November 10th.
Yep.
I'm sorry, November 11th, 2022. Was when Phil passed away, so a year later. It says, Philip, by now I guess you've settled into that better place people speak of when they're trying to get comfort. I know they're right, though. You aren't struggling anymore. All the monsters have finally forever been silenced. November 11th, 2022, you made a choice that forever changed our lives and our future. That day, I lost the love of my life. Your children, which Phil had 5 of, lost their father. Your parents lost their firstborn son, and you left 3 brothers with only memories of their big brother. Awful things have been said since your passing. Things like addicts are such a drain on society. Letting them die would be a just solution. I wonder if they know they're talking about my husband. That they're talking about the little boy with the reddish brown hair that was really good at nearly all he did. An OCD perfectionist. He could make anyone smile with his huge smile. They're talking about the kid who loved and believed in Jesus. They're talking about my husband, who became a raw, beautiful stranger, even when he would get high. The person who, to this day, even in death, can still make you smile. I would say Phil's not a drain on society, and nor are addicts. I think when we actually care for them and we take the time to meet them where they're at, accepting the fact that they might struggle and it might get worse and they might one day be gone from this life. I believe what we get back in return is what fuels humanity to become better.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about necessarily, are they going to get better and are they going to cost us resources, but how can we get better?
It's powerful. And so hearing that, knowing that, what are the actions that you take now to hold on to the legacy of Phil and make an impact?
I think I'm still working it out. You got it down in 1 year. You're
No,
perfect. I'm still working this out, but I would say our offices are downtown, are just above the Scott Block Theater. And we see a lot of homelessness there and a lot of drug abuse. I see Philip's eyes and a lot of these people's eyes, and I'll take time and I'll stop and I'll talk to them and I'll make sure that they're seen. And sometimes I hear their stories and they matter. One time I was along Gasoline Alley and it was bitter cold. It was a January minus 35 blowing wind. And I was just fueling up a vehicle. And there's two homeless individuals, younger, that were there, and they're trying to fill up a propane tank. And I just was like, hey, can I help in some way? And knowing that my brother's been homeless before. And so I was able to help them out, get their fuel, and then they're gonna head out and start walking, at night, cold, dark. I said, hey, well, I'll be happy to help you. And so they jumped in the vehicle and I took them to where their camp was, and it was kind of tucked away in the forest. And I stopped and I said, where are you guys going to stay the night? They pointed to a tent. And minus 35 blowing wind, you're going to die out there if you don't have some form of warmth. And anyways, they said, yeah, we have a propane tank and this is how we do our heater. And I'm just like, oh, this is so bad. But they didn't want to go to any homeless shelter. And they were fine. They went into their tent and I went off on my way and just said a couple prayers that really bothered me. A year and a half later, I bumped into one of these individuals, and they were actually close to where my house was. And they kind of ran up to me and they said, Stephen, I just want to let you know what you did for us really impacted our life. My girlfriend, she ended up having a baby, and everything went well. We're now living in a home, and things are a lot more normal. And we just want to thank you for taking time. It's part of how I see the impact on the impact that people who look like they're just a drain on society actually turning it around and saying, hey, we can actually make a difference. And that's one way out of so many different ways that we've been able to just give back and return that.
Throughout this conversation, you've been really post. I think you've done a good job at the grieving process. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So afterwards, well, after I received that phone call to today, the old saying is time heals all wounds. I don't really believe that. I think they can scab over, but unless you actually work through the pain of emotion, there's still some open festering that can take place. And become unhealthy. So for me, I just remember being able to talk it out with family. And then journaling and just taking time to journal and write down my emotions and write down my thoughts, and whether good or bad, I didn't care. I just needed to journal. And as that took place, clarity began to form. And it's just played out into how I parent and how I have relationships and the phone calls that I make to my brothers. I feel like a lot of that healing has really taken place. I would also say there was a program that I was part of. It was called the Freedom Sessions. And so it's a 9-month course ran by some friends of ours. And as I went through that, it really is a lot of deep therapy work. You bring a lot of homework home, you work through it. And I would say that was transformative for myself.
Really powerful. For those that are going through a similar journey, maybe they have a brother who they feel is lost to addiction. Maybe they've lost a sibling. What would you encourage them with?
So let me ask that question.
Yeah.
You got to just rephrase that one more time.
For those that they're dealing with a sibling that might be struggling with addiction, or maybe someone's passed away, what do you feel that they need to hold on to? What can encourage them during those dark seasons?
So when a friend is, or when a sibling or a loved one has passed away due to drug addiction, I would say there's no easy answer, and that it's going to be painful, but that's okay. And you need to go through the grieving process. You need to feel the pain, and you need to know that you're going to be able to eventually grow to a place of strength and resilience. But there's a lot of mixed emotions. There's a lot of mixed emotions. You're not getting that phone call late at night any longer. You know, your older brother is needs a ride somewhere. Those were earlier calls. Needs a ride somewhere, or he's in trouble, and so you got to pick him up. There's a lot of moments that I was witness to the impacts of drug abuse on my older brother, or witnessing drug abuse right beside me. And it's a very, you don't witness that any longer, but now you have the struggles of just processing the grief that oftentimes takes time to process. So I'd say to the families, you're going to get through it. And if you've gone through it, make a phone call to someone who hasn't. Make a phone call to that person who you know has recently lost someone. You might think that they just need their space. I know when I made that phone call, part of a thought went through my head, maybe Andrew doesn't want a phone call right now. But step out on the edge, make the call, and maybe one day you'll be on a podcast too.
Maybe.
I'm just kidding.
I think that's really powerful. I think oftentimes humans generally have good intentions. And so we have that idea of, I should reach out to that individual, or I should do whatever it might be. And I would encourage people just to do it. I remember driving home from Red Deer to Sylvan, and I just didn't feel like anyone else really got it. I'm like, I just lost a brother. Like, this just feels such an odd moment. And I remember, I'm like, Stephen had a brother pass away. I should contact him. And I just didn't. And then you called me. I was like, okay, well, I better answer this call. And we talked for that entire, probably 15-minute conversation. And I remember you just asking, like, what are you going to miss about him? And like you just knew the questions asked, and maybe you didn't even know about them. They just kept flowing out of you, and the level of impact. And so I'd encourage individuals that if they know someone that's going through a season of grief, that there's a loss, that there's something that they're mourning, whether it's a person or a thing or whatever it might be, to reach out, like actually pick up the phone and call them, invite them out for a coffee, bring over a meal to their house. Don't just send the text asking like, hey, let me know if there's something I can do. They're not going to tell you. Like no one wants that text.
No.
They want you to show up in an authentic way to you.
Yeah. And if you're in the close proximity of someone, just sit with them and tell them, you don't need to say anything. I just want you to know I'm here for you. Like your presence alone is a game changer. You don't need to diagnose a problem as to why someone passed away or, try to fix something. So you can take that pressure off. You can just sit.
Yeah.
And even for a phone call, you can just make a call and simply say, hey, I'm here for you. And if there's nothing else, if that's all you get across, that will be so impactful for the family who has lost someone. Yeah, and all kidding aside, I really do. I genuinely wanted you to know that you weren't alone in this.
I appreciate that. Thank you. If you were able to say one last thing to Phil, what would you say?
Well, aside from the generic, I love you. I would want him to know that. I'd say I forgive you.
What are you forgiving him for?
Well, I think I wanted him to be someone who he struggled to be. And I might also say, you don't have to measure up to what I want you to be. It's okay. You can just be yourself. Kind of that space of releasing. Sometimes we want something out of someone that they can't give.
Right.
And that's okay to just release and let that person be who they're able to be. So that's what I would say. How about yourself? If you had one last conversation with Simon, what would you want to say?
I'm really grateful because I had that. I was able to go to the hospital, even though there's 6 months in between. I had that conversation. What I'm looking forward to most is one day when I get to heaven, I get to turn to my brother. And I dream about this so often. I want to say, let's run. Yeah. I'm just so excited to see him. Full body, being able to walk, being able to talk. I want to wrestle him. I want to see who's the strongest brother. But that's what I'm looking forward to. I want to say, let's run.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
So we have a tradition where we ask every guest, what does happiness look like to you? We've talked about probably some of the darker moments of life and walking through grief, all that. But Stefan, what does happiness truly look like to you?
Okay. I'm still kind of stuck on my older brother. So I gotta make a comment.
Please do.
So Philip, the day that he passed away, that day was a mixture of a wide range of emotions. How he passed away was from drug overdose and a succession of poor decisions that involved a 2-6. But leading up to that, he said he was at my parents' house and he's there with the girls and he was completely sober and he was tired of fighting life. He was just tired. But there with the girls, all the girls, he's sitting there and he's in the couch. And my mom was a witness to this. They're having a conversation. And Phil says, "This is heaven.
Mm.
This is happiness."
Mm.
And I would go right back to the same thing as, for me, happiness is my kids. It's my wife. It's my brothers and extended family. And so that 100% is happiness for me.
So good. Stephen, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching me cry multiple times
Oh,
throughout
you're welcome.
this.
That was my goal. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Well, you succeeded. But no, I really appreciate just your genuine nature of you've gone through something that most people know eventually they will, but it definitely happened too early. And being able to take those lessons and then being able to share them with other individuals is so important and so significant. And the impact that you had for myself is tremendous. So I want to thank you.
Thanks for being my friend.